In the Beast Kingdom Batman v Superman Batman DAH-001 figure review, I said we were going to have a look at the Armored Batman, and as promised, here is the Beast Kingdom Armored Batman DAH-004. Armored Batman here, DAH-004. Just recently had a look at the original Batman costume, which was DAH-001. Obviously, anybody doing their math will know that I still got to pick up 002 and 003. Permitting, of course, the comic book store that I go to will actually stock those, but I could definitely pick up more of these because I've really been impressed so far with what they've released in figure form. Before we get to the figure, let's get some quick measurements going. Armored Batman stands at about 7 3/4 of an inch in height. In fact, for some comparisons, we'll bring in the DAH-001, the original Ben Affleck Batman. What's funny is that this Batman here does seem like he's a little bit taller. In fact, if we put them side by side, I think it's actually just the ears that ends up making this figure taller than this figure here. Both figures are exquisite, though. And the more and more time I'm spending with this one, the more I realize that this could very well be, as I've clearly indicated in the review of him, clearly could be the most accurate Ben Affleck Batman we've gotten to date. For his accessories, he gets pretty much the same sort of stuff that DAH-001 Batman got, right down to the same display base. Let me correct myself. Display base is the same except for the fact that on the front placard, instead of it being just Batman, you've got yourself Armored Batman. And just to show you the difference between the two bases, the tops of the bases are exactly the same, a very shiny, almost rectangular base, except for the front being slightly varied. The adjustable neck on the top is the exact same as well, which only has a single ratcheted joint on the bottom. The top will rotate and periodically will pop off as well, but it will rotate, there we go, all the way around. This will also rotate, and the prongs, the side clasps, will also open and close. The stands are really not intended for dynamic poses. In fact, they're more so designed for museum poses. There's really not enough footprint space on the base where you can fit the figure and do anything creative with them. It's not to say that you can't display them maybe with the leg maybe slightly moved forward, for example. You can get them in somewhat of a walking pose, but you are still limited to the spacing that they allot for these bases. To get him on the base, the cape on Armored Batman is considerably denser than the original Batman that we had to look at. So you have to really pry it back to get those clips around his waist. And even then, getting them around his waist, because his waist is a broader, because you got the armored broader piece here, it does mean that the clip has to really struggle to get around the utility belt. I didn't have as much the problem when it came to the original Batman, but like getting this around his waist can be a little bit more difficult. As I mentioned though, you can see what I'm talking about. You really can't, there's not a lot that you can really do differently with the figures based on the size restraints that you have of the base itself. But I mean, it's not to say that you couldn't have the legs slightly spread. You could have like Batman kind of angled to the side. You still have luxuries, but you certainly couldn't have them leaping or anything like that. Let's get him off of his base here. And we'll just move the base over to the side for the time being. I had mentioned that the accessories are very similar to one another, and they actually are. You get a lot of repeats here between Armored Batman and regular Batman. I'll do the comparisons here so you guys can see. For starters, you get the grenade gun. Armored Batman does have it and warrants, I think, having it. Batman didn't necessarily need to include it. He did have the grapnel gun after all. Nowhere in the accessory breakdown does Armored Batman come with the Kryptonite Spear. So I think I probably would have forfeited one of these in favor of the Kryptonite Spear instead, because I think that would have looked really good specifically with this Batman. But you do get the same Kryptonite grenade shooting gun. No, nothing different between the two. I guess for the very least, there's a little bit of extra paint worn on one than the other, but that's mileage may vary. It's obviously, I don't think there's any consistent patterning to the way that they airbrush or dry brush those parts. So you may have a little bit more on yours, you may have a little bit less. Speaking of, not quite a little bit more, but speaking of similar accessories, he comes also with the Batarangs. Part of me really wants to bend these, and the reasoning why I say that is because dropping them, they do feel or sound like they are metal. I'm convinced, however, they are plastic. I don't think that they are metal, and nor do I want to pry it to figure out if that be the case. I wouldn't want to break these, but you get 3 of them, which are the exact same as the ones that Batman got. So again, lots of common ones. Lots of common ones. I just dropped one, but you get another 2 just in case. One of the things I really wasn't expecting is he also comes included with his grapple gun. It's not part of the tray that comes with his accessories. Rather, instead, it's like a little baggie that comes with the display stand. So if you think it's just the display stand that comes included with this guy, underneath the tray, that is, look further, because he does also have the same grapple gun as well. Right down to the same hook, which you can plug into the bottom here, and the same grapple wire, which plugs into the actual, well, plugs into the same hole there, and then you can take the grapple hook and just attach it to the top here. It's a little on the softer side, so getting it sometimes fit into place can be a little bit more difficult. I mentioned this point I'm about to make in the previous review of Batman, but it's not wired. Like, this doesn't feel like it's a wire. It's just a very kind of denser cabling, but you can't bend it, you can't manipulate it. So really, unless you've got like a wire or something running down from it, or unless maybe you just attach this somewhere. If not, the line will just droop from the grapple gun. Still think the handle could be a little bit more browner, but it is the same grapple gun. Let's reach off here. The one that came with Batman. Nothing different. Again, mileage may vary depending on the level of wear that they've added to the handle portion there, but other than that, it's the exact same. What he does, however, get, which obviously would be exclusives to him, would be a series of interchangeable hands. I went solely back to the default look of having them with closed fists. That's how you get them out of packaging. But he does come with other hands as well, like relaxed spreading hands. He comes with like trigger hands, and he comes with like hands for holding the batarangs, which is basically the same as what we got with Batman. One thing I do want to mention, though, is because the hands are thicker, they're a little chunkier, these little sausage digits, it can make for a little bit more of a tougher time getting the handles of things into the fingers. You kind of have to really pry it, and thank goodness this is a softer, like rubbery plastic, because if not, it would likely break. But it takes a lot to get it in between those fingers, these chunky little pigs down here. But you can get it into his hand. Just, it's a little bit more difficult to accomplish that. So that's all your accessories. We'll move the base out of the way. Let's have a look at Armored Batman. As much as I love the other Batman for him being the most, I think, movie accurate, I would say the same here with Armored Batman. We've gotten Armored Batmans before through the likes of Mattel and many different other companies. Mattel being, of course, the bottom barrel retail release, so you're not going to be getting high-end looking collectibles out of that. And then you've got the very high scale of the Hot Toys, which again are more expensive, much bigger figures. From the scale of this figure, I don't think that I could find a figure that's closest to looking like Ben Affleck than this figure right here. I'm really impressed. I may sound like a broken record saying that, but I'm really impressed with Beast Kingdom. And equally so, something also I've mentioned, boy, it sounds like deja vu. One thing I also mentioned too is that the price point of these, staggeringly low. I mean, this figure here was actually the same price as the original Batman, the DAH-004. They were $69.99, so about $70, and your tax would let you take this guy home. And I really think that's an excellent price point, comparing it to, say, like the SH Figure Arts or the Play Arts Kai figures, which will be a little taller even still after that. But it's a really nice representation here of Batman. The only thing really missing from this guy is the fact that his eyes don't light up, but they do a pretty good job of giving him just the right brightness in the white, so it does look like his eyes are glowing. I mean, again, they could get a little bit down to the actual details and do like the outer outline of the eye as a lighter color, so it actually looks like the outer frame of the lens is actually what's lit up. But I cannot make any complaints whatsoever for the likeness and certainly the detail and paint that has been applied to this guy. At its bottom basement color, you're probably looking at some grays, some dark grays making up the majority of his armor, but then they've dry brushed, basically applying the paint via just touching the edges here. May have airbrushed it, but it looks as if it's... You got, first of all, the hammered out details of the armor. Second to that, you've got fantastic metallic silver paint and almost a gunmetal gray that's been applied to the armor here. Underneath all of this, if you would be able to take the armor off, you'd basically be treated to a very similar armor to what the original Batman had. And by the original, I just mean the original Batman suit. And even underneath this, some of the components can move, like the bicep guard, for example. Most, if not everything else, is just affixed. It's just glued to the frame. I guess the utility belt is also another loose appliance, but everything is molded with no intent to be able to be removed. You wouldn't be able to take that off. He's big, he's clunky, exactly the way that Batman should be. We spin him around again, looking at the cape. Cape is a very dense material and a different shape as well. We'll put that down just for a second. Like I need more and more reason to bring in the other Batman, but there's the original Batman. You can see the capes are not carbon copies to one another. They didn't simply just take one cape and move it over here sort of thing. The capes are drastically different. This is a softer cape. The one on Armored Batman is a much denser material. But it's the same sort of rubbery plastic material. Love that Batman. I guess that sounds such like a broken record. The material here on Batman isn't quite the same. It doesn't look like it's got the leather-like material to it. Instead, you actually can see these little grains running through the material here, or the plastic that they went with. It seems as if no detail has been skimped or missed on this particular Batman. Like I said, everything except for maybe light up eyes is about the only thing I would say makes this guy a perfect figure. Now, of course, I can't be biased. I have to find some faults with the figure, because if I didn't, then again, you would question whether this guy just, well, he loves Armored Batman, so he's going to find everything right with the figure and not necessarily look at the nitpicks. So we look at the individual problems with the figure, and they are very few. At the very least, you could see that there's a peg. There's, of course, the same problem that the other Batman had. You've got a ball joint, basically. Let me just take the hand off here. You've got a ball joint here, and then you've got a ball joint in the socket of the arm. Well, when you add any hand to that, there's always a gap. There's no way of fixing that. You can't simply push it in. There's always going to be a gap between one ball joint and the other. That may offset some people, may disturb them to the point of not wanting to pick up this figure. I did notice, though, to be fair, that the Batman's arms here on Armored Batman are a lot looser than regular Batman. A lot of instances, I thought, actually getting this guy out of packaging, I thought he was broken. Because you can see, let me just show you how the socket system works. So you got basically a ball joint or a hinge joint attaching itself to a ball socket. And it sits in the socket placement of the shoulder there. But then this here actually moves in and out. If you leave it defaulted to just being completely pulled out, that the arms, yes, are loose. Both arms. This arm especially, very, very loose. So really, don't think that it is broken. It just will involve you pushing the arm back into the socket. And you may also even need to bring the arms up a little bit as well. The arm still sits a little loose, but it doesn't sit nearly as loose, and you certainly don't see a big gap forming or a big gap happening there in between the arm and the torso. Let's talk his posability. It's basically the same as the original Batman. Head rotates all the way around. You can also hinge the head up and down, slightly angle the head back and forth as well. I just want to show you also too, like if I move this strap, this almost unnecessary strap that he's got, it's basically like another holster strap there. If you move it out of the way, you can actually make out where his cowl piece would have attached to the socket, the actual torso area there. And you can also make out his armor underneath, almost as if you could go in there and take the armor out. And it almost seems as if it is a separate piece, at least this part here. Again, I would not entertain the idea of removing that. There wouldn't really be anything underneath, but I'm wondering if it is actually the same torso underneath as the original Batman there. The arms rotate all the way around. You get a slight rocker back and forth just by the virtue of the way everything's kind of plugged in there. It moves in and out. He has a rotation in the bicep. He has a double hinge elbow, which kind of actually works on a ratcheted joint, which is really nice. I like that. Hands rotate. Get a ball joint and a ball joint, so you get some extra range of motion there. Upper torso ball joint. Because actually this is also soft, it means that you can move the torso a little bit more freer because it doesn't seem hindered because it's got a dense plastic torso. He also has a waist swivel, which is slightly hindered just by the way it's sculpted, because you've got these plates here running down into the utility belt. It's a little more blocked up there. And then as it comes to the legs are basically the same thing as the arms. They slightly detach, not to the level that the arms do, but it gives you some extra movement in the legs. Just you want to bring those back up from time to time so that you just don't have that gap forming once again. They swivel, but they actually swivel more so on the ball socket of the thigh. You get a double hinge knee, which creaks, and I think there's a little bit of a ratcheted joint happening in there. And then as it comes to the feet, they aren't as generous. You've still got the toe articulation, but they're not as generous when it comes to the ankle rocker. This one actually is not this one's a lot better than this one. This one's just really, really stiff. And there's the sculpting on the undersides of his feet. Not only would I say for its scale, it's one of the most posable of armored Batmans, but like the other Batman that we looked at, I would say it's the most accurate to the one that appears in the movie. The DAH-001 and DAH-004 Armored Batman deserve your full attention. These figures are fantastic. I may have been hard to read over the course of these two reviews for you guys to gauge whether I was interested in these figures, but let me just tell you this. For the price point, and some may say it's debatable as to whether the price point is a little too high. In all honesty, I think comparing it to the likes of Play Art's Kai releases and say some of the SH Figure Art releases, I think these particular figures are the best in their class. There's always going to be the higher end hot toy releases, but those cater to the market of those that like 12-inch tall figures. But if you are looking for a market of a smaller scale figure, save your money. Don't get the Mattel releases. Don't get the Figma releases. Don't get the SH Figure Art releases. Get yourself the Beast Kingdom releases. They're affordable, at least in the higher scale collectible market. They're highly detailed, and they're super articulated. There's really very little that I could find as nitpicks to these figures. Armored Batman sure could have afforded maybe a Kryptonite Spear, which is something that these figures, few and far between, don't seem to come with. And if maybe gaps are a problem, then yes, I'll admit it, gaps are a bit of a problem in these particular figures, especially with the shoulders and the hands. As you may notice, big noticeable gaps, but they're not nearly as bad as, say, some of the releases from PlayArt's Kai. I think moving forward, any of these figures that they are releasing, Beast Kingdom that is, will be definitely figures I'll be scoping out right from the get-go. Definitely would be interested in picking up the DAH-002 and the DAH-003. If I do pick those up, expect reviews of those as well. Today we were having a look at the Beast Kingdom. This was the Batman v Superman Armored Batman DAH-004. Highly recommended. If you guys haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so. Many more videos will be coming your way. You can also find out what I'm doing when I'm not reviewing by following me on both Facebook and Twitter. You can all find out. In fact, Twitter usually is my go-to if you guys want to kind of see upcoming things that I'm doing, pickups, what I'm doing out and about, or oots and aboots, which a lot of people seem to think I say in Canada. Canadians do say that from time to time, but maybe not to that extreme. But you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter if you guys want to see what I'm doing when I'm not reviewing. More videos, guys, will be coming your way. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.